Welcome everybody to the Committee on Streets and Services. Today is Monday, November 8th, 2021. Good morning. I understand that state law currently requires that the following announcement be made at the beginning of every remote public hearing as follows. Due to the current public health emergency, City Council committees are currently meeting remotely. We are using Microsoft Teams to make these remote hearings possible. Instructions for how the public may view and offer public testimony at public hearings of council committees are included in the public hearing notices that are published in the Daily News, Enquirer, and Legal Intelligencer prior to the hearing, and can also be found on phlcouncil.com. I now note that the hour has come. Mr. Maynard, will you please call the roll to take attendance? Members that are in attendance, will you please indicate that you are present when your name is called? Also, please say a few brief words when responding so that your image will be displayed on screen when you speak. Mr. Clerk.
Vice Chair Squilla.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and colleagues present.
Councilmember Bass. Councilmember O. Councilmember Brooks.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and colleagues. I am present.
Thank you, Councilmember Brooks. Councilmember Johnson.
Present. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Councilmember. And Councilmember Gilmore Richardson.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, colleagues. I am present.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. A quorum of the committee is present and this hearing is now called to order. Public hearing of the Committee on the Streets and Services regarding bills number 210-584, 210-675, 210-678, 210-679, 210-690, 210-136, 210-746, 210-773, 210-774, 210-779, 210-780, 210-781, 210-880, 210-826, 210-846, and 210-847. Mr. Maynard, will you please read the titles of these bills?
Just one small correction, Mr. Chair. Bill 210800, not 880.
I apologize. I thought I said 210-800. Mr. Maynard, will you please read the titles of the bills?
Of course. Bill 210584, an ordinance establishing no truck parking regulations in the vicinity of Weccacoe Street and Oregon Avenue. Bill 210675, an ordinance amending Section 122809 of the Philadelphia Code, entitled Civil Penalties and Costs, to change certain penalties for parking on sidewalks, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill 210678, an ordinance establishing parking regulations in the vicinity of Allens Lane and Wissahickon Avenue. Bill 210679, an ordinance amending Section 9203 of the Philadelphia Code, entitled Street Vendors, by permitting vending on certain sections of 49th Street, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill 210690, an ordinance establishing a one-way regulation on Bryan Street from West Mount Pleasant Avenue to Allens Lane, northbound. Bill 210746, an ordinance establishing parking regulations in the vicinity of Wildey Street and Hancock Street, Wildey Street and Marlborough Street, Salmon Street and Columbia Avenue, Montgomery Avenue and Wildey Street. Bill 210773, an ordinance establishing parking restrictions for certain commercial vehicles in the vicinity of Bluegrass Road and Grant Avenue, Decatur Street and Torresdale Avenue, Cotman Avenue and Milner Street, Barnard Avenue and St. Vincent Street, Battersby Street and St. Vincent Street, St. Vincent Street and Roosevelt Boulevard, Wellington Street and Battersby Street, Brighton Street and Boros Avenue, Princeton Avenue and Boros Avenue, Friendship Street and Hawthorne Street, Tulip Street and Decatur Street, Ashton Road and Grant Avenue, and Home Avenue and Roosevelt Boulevard, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill 210774, an ordinance authorizing the Procurement Commissioner to enter into a contract for the construction of a water main and appurtenant work required to provide public water service in the 4000 block of Wells Street and the 6600 block of Charles Street. Bill 210779, an ordinance authorizing encroachments in the nature of a sidewalk plaque in the vicinity of 447 North Broad Street under certain terms and conditions. Bill 210780, An ordinance establishing parking regulations in the vicinity of Clarion Street and Reed Street, Clarion Street and Wharton Street, Manton Street and South 8th Street, Wilder Street and South 12th Street, Franklin Street and Tasker Street, Marshall Street to Wharton Street. Bill 210781. An ordinance establishing parking regulations in the vicinity of Franklin Street and Rittner Street, South 10th Street and Mifflin Street, Mifflin Street and South 9th Street, Dudley Street and South 10th Street, McKean Street and South 9th Street. Bill 210800. An ordinance amending Title 12 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Parking Regulations and Penalties to add a new section entitled Parking for Qualified School Employees to provide parking for certain school employees at certain locations, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill 210826. An ordinance authorizing the revision of lines and grades on a portion of City Plan number 230 by striking from the City Plan Crescent Street from Osborne Street to Vassar Street and reserving and placing on the City Plan a right-of-way for sewer and drainage purposes within a portion of Crescent Street being stricken under certain terms and conditions. Bill 210846. An ordinance establishing parking regulations for certain commercial vehicles in the vicinity of Tulip Street and Robin Street and Longshore Avenue and New State Road, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill 210847. An ordinance establishing a no truck parking regulation on Winfield Avenue from 52nd Street to 54th Street, both sides, 54th Street from Winfield Avenue to Gaynor Road, both sides, George's Lane from Winfield Avenue to Gaynor Road, both sides. Those are the bills to be heard at the committee, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Before we begin, please be advised that Bill number 210800, listed to be heard at this hearing, will be held back at the request of the bill sponsor. No testimony will be heard and no action will be taken on 210800 at this meeting. Before we begin to hear testimony from the witnesses we have for today, everyone who's been invited to the meeting to testify should be aware that this public hearing is being recorded. Because the hearing is being recorded, participants and viewers have no reasonable expectation of privacy. By continuing to be in the meeting, you are consenting to being recorded. Additionally, prior to recognizing members for questions or comments they have for witnesses, I will note for the record at this time that we will use the chat feature available on Microsoft Teams to allow members to signify that they would like to be recognized. In order to comply with the Sunshine Act, the chat feature must only be used for this purpose. Mr. Maynard, will you please call the first set of bills and witness we have to testify this morning?
Of course. The first bill we'll hear here is Bill 210675. The testifier for the bill is Lily Reynolds from Otis. Ms. Reynolds, please, when you're ready.
Thank you. One moment, please.
Let
me pull up my testimony. Hold on.
No problem.
Good morning, Chairperson Thomas and members of the Streets and Services Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. My name is Lily Reynolds. I am the Deputy Director of the Office of Complete Streets at the Office of Transportation, Infrastructure, and Sustainability. I am here today to offer testimony on Bill 210675. I would like to thank Council Members Heenan, Bass, and Johnson for sponsoring this important piece of legislation. This bill authorizes the fine of violation for stopping, standing, parking in a prohibited place on a sidewalk to be $300. Otis supports this bill, which is consistent with the Mayor's Vision Zero initiative. Impeding a sidewalk with a parked vehicle is a violation that reduces the safety of people walking in Philadelphia. Compared to peer cities, Philadelphia has a significant pedestrian safety problem. In fact, Philadelphia has twice the number of pedestrian fatalities per resident than both New York City and Boston. For residents that use wheelchairs or other mobility devices, a clear and accessible sidewalk is extremely important and is required by the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. Ensuring that sidewalks are not blocked by parked cars provides safe infrastructure for people and improves the quality of life for Philadelphia residents. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I would be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee for this particular witness? There being none, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Chair recognizes Councilmember Gilmore Richardson. I don't. I'm sorry. I didn't notice you. Know that you want to be recognized.
No, it's no problem at all because I'm having issues with my camera today too. But at any rate, I just had a very quick question regarding enforcement of this legislation. For the record, I just wanted to get the information regarding which city department will be enforcing this legislation.
Did the witness hear the question from Councilmember Gilmore Richardson?
Yes, I did, Councilmember Gilmore Richardson. My understanding is that this would be enforced by the Philadelphia Parking Authority.
Okay, so the Philadelphia Parking Authority would be responsible for the enforcement of this legislation.
That is correct.
Okay, and do we have any data regarding sidewalk enforcement citywide?
I don't believe Otis has data about enforcement citywide. That is something that we can certainly look into and discuss with our colleagues at the PPA and provide information to the committee.
Okay, I'm in support of the legislation. I just wanted to ask from an equitable standpoint regarding enforcement and ensuring that, this would be happening citywide. So if you could get that data and or information regarding the current sidewalk enforcement, and if you could have the data broken down by any, infractions or tickets that are issued, broken down by council district, that would be helpful. And if you can provide it to the chair. Okay? Thank you very, very much, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
No, thank you for your line of questioning, and we'll ask if it's Mr. Maynard and to the administration. What we'll ask is that the information be provided if the bill is voted out of committee today. That the information be provided before the vote comes to the floor. Thank you. Are there any other questions from members of the committee? There being none, I want to thank this witness for your testimony. Mr. Maynard, will you please call the next panel and witness to testify for this bill?
Of course. The next bill we'll hear is Bill 210774. Laura Copeland from the Philadelphia Water Department is our testifier.
Good morning. Please state your name.
I'm sorry. Hi, my name is Laura Copeland.
Councilmember Dom, I believe your phone is ringing. Please proceed, Ms. Copeland.
Okay. Good morning, Chairperson Thomas and the members of the Committee on Streets and Services. I am Laura Copeland, Assistant Deputy Commissioner for Education, Community Engagement, and Government Affairs for the Philadelphia Water Department. I'm here today to testify in support of Bill number 210774, sponsored by Councilmember Heenan, which authorizes the Procurement Commissioner to enter into a contract for the construction of a water main and appurtenant work required to provide public water service on the 4000 block of Wells Street and the 6600 block of Charles Street. The impacted properties on these blocks are currently served by private water service lines that have outlived their useful life and require the installation of public water mains. In accordance with the Philadelphia Code, impacted residents on the 4000 block of Wells Street and the 6600 block of Charles Street will be assessed for the installation of the new water mains. PWD respectfully requests that this bill be reported favorably out of this committee and that the rules of council be suspended to allow for first reading of this bill at the next session of City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions from members of the committee for this witness?
Mr. Chair?
Chair recognizes Councilmember Gilmore Richardson.
I have a quick question. Which bill was that, please?
Mr. Clerk, can you read the bill again, please?
Of course. The bill is number 210774. It involves Charles and Wells Streets.
Yes. Yes, I have a very quick question for the Water Department, if possible.
Please proceed, Councilmember.
Okay, thank you. A very quick question, because we've encountered a number of cases like this over my years in city government, where we have a number of blocks that need public water service, and they may be either on a private line or for whatever reason have never been hooked up to public service. Do you have an idea how many blocks like this exist in the city, and what's the overall citywide plan to address these particular blocks? I know we had some cases, I believe, up in Roxborough a few years back that we worked on with our constituent services representatives. So do you have an idea of the full scope of this issue across the entire city, and what are we doing to address this block by block?
So we are working with Councilmember Heenan's office because they've convened a citywide interdepartmental working group to address this. At this time, the water department is trying to put together a citywide inventory. It's a little difficult for us to do that as it's not our infrastructure, so we don't have records of it, but we are trying to create an inventory and then work with this citywide group to address these issues. And we can certainly keep your office as well as all of council abreast of the progress moving forward.
Okay, and then just for the record, the residents of these particular blocks have to pay for is it the installation or the initial hookup to the public line?
It's an assessment fee. The assessment fee is $4.50 per foot of frontage.
Okay.
So it's not for the main. The water department is paying for the main itself. It's an assessment fee.
Okay.
To the line, yes.
Okay, so it depends house by house, I guess, how far it is to get to the main.
That is correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so do you have a price on average how much this would cost per household?
It's really difficult to say what that cost would be. Like you said, it really depends on the amount of frontage in front of the homes.
Sure.
I can certainly get back to you with that. I can check in with our design team, to see if they have an estimate. Yep.
Okay, that'll be great, because I'm curious about how much it costs, particularly for residents who purchase homes and may not be aware if they're not on public service at the time of the purchase, and then later have to be charged this assessment fee to get public water service. So at any rate, I know this is a citywide issue, so I just wanted to put that on the radar and on the record, and I look forward to the follow-up from the water department. Thank you very, very much, and I'm in support of this bill.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from members of this committee for this witness? Hearing none, I want to thank you for your testimony. Mr. Maynard, will you please call the next set of witnesses?
I'm good.
Of course. The next bill is Bill 210679, and the witness for this bill is Maureen Blaney from L&I.
Please state your name for the record, and you may begin with your testimony.
Good morning. My name is Maureen Blaney. All right. Good morning, Chairperson Thomas and members of the Committee on Streets and Services. My name is Maureen Blaney, and I am the vending unit manager for the Department of License and Inspections. Today, I am here to provide testimony on Bill number 210679, which, if enacted, will amend Section 9203 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Street Vendors. The bill would permit vending on 49th Street, both sides from Parkside Avenue to Jefferson Street, between the hours of 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. The department has no objection to this bill. Thank you for the opportunity to provide the department's testimony. I am happy to answer questions at this time.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions from members of this committee for this particular witness? Before we move on, I would like to acknowledge that Councilmember David O. has joined us. Good morning, Councilmember.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning. Are there any questions for this witness? There being none, I want to thank you for your testimony. Mr. Maynard, will you please call the next witness?
The next bill to be heard is Bill 210826. Noel Marconi from Streets and Sarah Chu from Planning are the witnesses to be heard for this bill.
Good morning. You could provide your testimony consecutively. So please state your name for the record and you may begin with your testimony.
Good morning, Chairperson Thomas and members of the Streets and Services Committee. My name is Noel Marconi. I'm the Director of Legislative Affairs for the Department of Streets. I'm here today to offer testimony on Bill number 210826, introduced by Councilmember Jones. This is an administration ordinance requested by the Philadelphia Water Department. The purpose of this proposed ordinance is to authorize the striking from the city plan Crescent Street from Osborne Street to Vassar Street and reserving and placing on the city plan a right-of-way for sewer and drainage purposes extending from Osborne Street to Vassar Street within a portion of Crescent Street being stricken. The section of Crescent Street is not legally open and not paved or in use by public traffic. The purpose of this action is to facilitate construction by the Water Department of a new sewer required to relieve unsanitary conditions resulting from failing private septic systems. The Department of Streets supports this ordinance and recommends to your committee for favorable action. I thank you for the opportunity to testify and will be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Good morning, Chair Member Thomas and the Committee on Streets and Services. I'm Sarah Chu, City Planner with the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. I'm here to testify on Bill number 210826, which was introduced by Councilmember Jones on October 14th, 2021. This bill will strike Crescent Street between Osborne Street and Vassar Street from City Plan and replace it with a right-of-way for sewer and drainage purposes within the portion of the area being stricken. This action will allow for the Philadelphia Water Department to proceed with a project to improve sewer infrastructure in this area. The utility right-of-way is necessary for construction and ongoing sewer maintenance. Currently, the homes on Osborne Street are on private septic systems, which have created unsanitary conditions in the area. Philadelphia Water Department will implement sanitary sewer improvements to provide a means for residents to connect to the public sewer system. Concurrently, the storm sewer improvements will allow for water departments to eliminate combined sewer condition in this area. The Planning Commission will consider this bill at its meeting on November 18th, 2021 with the staff recommendation for approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Thank you both for your testimony. Are there any questions from members of the committee for these witnesses? There being none, I want to thank you both for your testimony. We appreciate it. Mr. Maynard, will you please call the next set of witnesses?
Of course. The next bills to be heard are bills 210584, 210678, 210690, 210773, 210779, 210846, and 210847. The witness for all of that bill group is Noel Marconi from Streets.
Good morning, Chairperson Thomas and members of the Streets and Services Committee. My name is Noel Marconi and I'm the Director of Legislative Affairs for the Department of Streets. I'm here today to offer testimony on Bill number 210584, introduced by Councilmember Squilla. This ordinance establishes a no truck parking regulation on the north side of Oregon Avenue from 70 feet east of Weccacoe Avenue to 100 east of Weccacoe Avenue, and on the east side of Weccacoe Avenue from 185 feet north of Oregon Avenue to 550 feet north of Oregon Avenue. The Department of Streets has no objections to this bill. The regulations can be posted within 30 days of the bill's passage. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Good morning, Chairperson Thomas and members of the Streets and Services Committee. My name is Noel Marconi, and I am the Director of Legislative Affairs for the Department of Streets. I'm here today to offer testimony on Bill number 210678, introduced by Councilmember Bass. This ordinance establishes a no parking regulation on Allen's Lane, both sides from Wissahickon Avenue to the terminus of Allen's Lane, 180 feet west of Orwell Road. Department of Streets has no objections to this bill. The regulations can be posted within 30 days of the bill's passage. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I would be happy to answer any questions you may have. Good morning, Chairperson Thomas and members of the Streets and Services Committee. My name is Noelle Marconi, and I'm the Director of Legislative Affairs for the Department of Streets. I'm here today to offer testimony on Bill number 210690, introduced by Councilmember Bass. This ordinance establishes a one-way regulation on Bryan Street from West Mount Pleasant Avenue to Allen's Lane northbound. The Department of Streets has no objections to this bill. The regulations can be posted within 30 days of the bill's passage. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Good morning, Chairperson Thomas and members of the Streets and Services Committee. My name is Noelle Marconi, and I'm the Director of Legislative Affairs for the Department of Streets. I'm here to offer testimony on Bill number 210773, introduced by Councilmember Heenan. This is an ordinance establishing parking regulations for certain commercial vehicles in the vicinity of Bluegrass Road and Grand Avenue, Decatur Street and Torresdale Avenue, Cotman Avenue and Milner Street, Barnard Avenue and St. Vincent Street, Battersby Street and St. Vincent Street and Roosevelt Boulevard, Wellington Street and Battersby Street, Brighton Street and Bourse Avenue, Princeton Avenue and Bourse Avenue, Friendship Street and Hawthorne Street, Tulip Street and Decatur Street, Ashton Road and Grand Avenue, and Home Avenue and Roosevelt Boulevard. Department of Streets has no objections to this bill. The regulations can be posted within the next few months. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Good morning, Chairperson Thomas and members of the Streets and Services Committee. My name is Noelle Marconi. I'm the Director of Legislative Affairs for the Department of Streets. I'm here to offer testimony on Bill number 210779, introduced by Councilmember Squilla. This bill authorizes the owner to construct, own, and maintain a sidewalk plaque in the vicinity of 447 North Broad Street under certain terms and conditions. The Department of Streets is not opposed to this proposed encroachment, as the clear passable sidewalk space to remain on North Broad Street after its installation meets the required complete streets walking zone minimum width. This concludes my testimony. I'm pleased to answer any questions you may have. Good morning, Chairperson Thomas and members of the Streets and Services Committee. My name is Noelle Marconi, and I'm the Director of Legislative Affairs for the Department of Streets. I'm here today to offer testimony on Bill number 210846, introduced by Councilmember Heenan. This is an ordinance establishing parking regulations for certain commercial vehicles in the vicinity of Tulip Street and Robin Street and Longshore Avenue and New State Road. Department of Streets has no objections to this bill. The regulations can be posted within the next few months depending on the current workload. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Good morning, Chairperson Thomas and members of the Streets and Services Committee. My name is Noelle Marconi, and I'm the Director of Legislative Affairs for the Department of Streets. I'm here today to offer testimony on Bill number 210847, introduced by Councilmember Jones and Gilmore Richardson. This ordinance establishes a no truck parking regulation on Winfield Avenue from 52nd Street to 54th Street, both sides, 54th Street from Winfield Avenue to Gaynor Road, both sides, and George's Lane from Winfield Avenue to Gaynor Road, both sides. The Department of Streets has no objections to this bill. The regulation can be posted within 30 days of the bill's passage. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for your testimony. Chair recognizes Councilmember Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I rise to thank my colleague and my district council member, Councilmember Curtis Jones Jr., for introducing this legislation. There's really been a significant issue with tractor trailers parking on Winfield Avenue between North 54th Street and North 52nd, which for context is close to the Penn Memorial Baptist Church, and then a full residential area. And so also on North 54th Street between Winfield Avenue and Gaynor Road, although there are several religious institutions, it's primarily a residential area. And there's been a significant issue. I know the community has tried hard to work with the owners and the drivers of the tractor trailers to no avail. And during the recent 52nd Ward RCO meeting, a number of the members spoke up in favor of this legislation and asking that the signs be posted as soon as possible. So I just wanted to rise in support of this legislation and thank my colleague, Councilmember Curtis Jones Jr. for introducing this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Gilmore Richardson, and thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a question regarding this bill.
Chair recognizes Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you very much. I think the bill, is great. We have a lot of issues regarding tractor trailers, parking in residential areas in Eastwick, Southwest Philadelphia. I had a question. So once the signs go up, who's responsible for the enforcement and towing of these tractor trailers? Because it's been my experience that where there's no truck stopping or parking, I mean, they might get a ticket or two, but they still continue to park. So how do you take it to the next level where like somebody's actually coming out and towing these tractor trailers for parking in residential areas or non-parking areas?
We have our chief traffic engineer, Mark Washington, on the line. I'm going to ask him to answer that question because he knows more about that than I do. Mark?
Yes, good morning. It's Mark Washington, Assistant Chief Traffic Engineer with the Streets Department. Once the signs are posted, and let's say, okay, this is outside of, usually like Center City, it'll be the parking authority that would do the ticketing and make sure the towing is taking place. But here, with being that it's in one of the residential neighborhoods, that will be the police. Once the signs are posted, then there's an enforcement matter, and the vehicles will have to be ticketed and towed by Philadelphia Police.
Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. That's good insight. Just want to get it out there. So it seems to me that there has to be more of a commitment from the Philadelphia Police Department and Parking Authority when it comes to the removal of tractor trailers when they still decide to continue to move the park in locations where they aren't allowed to park. That's all. I just want to get clarity for the record. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Did you want to follow up? Okay. Chair recognizes Councilmember Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I wanted to follow up on the question from our colleague, Councilmember Johnson. Mr. Washington, you stated that in Center City, it's the PPA that does enforcement, but in neighborhoods, it's the parking authority. Could you notate for us the difference as to why that takes place and why it's not either one entity or the other across the city of Philadelphia?
Also, I'm sorry. I want to add as well. You also have parking authority enforcements like in the business district. So I'm sorry. I didn't mean to just include just Center City, but when you're dealing with parking enforcement, you have Center City, obviously. You have University City, and then you have business districts that are outside of Center City, University City, where there are parking authority, green and white signage, and red and white parking restriction signs. And at that point, that's where you have the parking authority to do the enforcement, the ticketing, and towing if as needed. But what I'm saying, like in residential areas where there's no parking authority regulations, and as long as we have the red and white parking restriction signs, i.e., no truck parking anytime signs or signs restricting truck parking, once the signs are posted, then the police would have to be enforced by the police at that point. But I'm sorry, I meant to include University City and also business districts that are outside of Center City that tend to be patrolled by the parking authority.
Okay, thank you so much for that clarification. If we have any further questions regarding enforcement, we'll be sure to follow up with you and also the PPA and
Okay,
PPD. Okay,
Yep.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Councilmember Gilmore Richardson. Are there any other questions from members of this committee for this panel or on any of the bills that's been testified about thus far? Hearing none, I want to thank this witness for their testimony as well as others who offer some level of testimony. Mr. Clerk, can you please read the next bill?
The next bills to be considered are Bills 210780, Bill 210781, and 210746. For these bills, the only testimony being provided is written testimony by Dion Bracely from the PPA. This testimony was circulated to all the members of the committee prior to the hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Are there any questions from or comments of members of this committee based on the testimony that was submitted? Hearing none, I want to say thank you for the testimony that was submitted. Mr. Clerk, are there any other bills or resolutions being considered today?
The only other bill listed was Bill 210800, which is being held at the request of the member and is not being heard today.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Are there any other questions or comments from members of the committee? All right, well, this concludes the hearing, and we will now go into the public meeting. There being no further questions from members of this committee and no other witnesses to testify, I will ask if there is anyone else present in the hearing whose name we feel to call, that those who wish to offer testimony or any other bills be considered today to speak, please speak up. Hearing none, I want to thank all the panels and witnesses for all your participation today. We value your opinions. I now invite all panels and witnesses to please disconnect from the public meeting before we go into the public. Please disconnect from the meeting before we go into our public meeting. We will now pause the proceedings briefly as multiple participants leave the hearing. As they leave, this again concludes the public hearing of the committee. We will now go into a public meeting to consider action to be taken on the bills before the committee today. Mr. Clerk, will you please call the roll to take attendance? Members that are in attendance, will you please indicate that you are present when your name is called? Also, please say a few brief words when responding so that your image will be displayed on screen when you speak. Mr. Clerk.
Vice Chair Squilla. Councilmember Bass. Councilmember O.
I'm present. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Councilmember. Councilmember Brooks.
I'm present.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Johnson.
Present.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Gilmore Richardson.
I'm present.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A quorum of the committee is present. We do not have any bills that need to be amended. So, the chair recognizes Councilmember Gilmore Richardson for a single motion on the bills that are being considered today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that bill numbers 210584, 210675, 210678, 210679, 210690, 210136, 210746, 210773, 210774, 210779, 210780, 210781, 210826, 210846, and 210847, including any amendments that have just been approved, be reported from this committee with the favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of these bills at the next session of council.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that the bills just read by Councilmember Gilmore Richardson, including any amendments that have been approved today, be reported from this committee with the favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of these bills at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? The ayes have it and the motion carries. Thank you, everybody. This concludes our meeting. This concludes our business for the day for the Streets and Services Committee hearing. I appreciate all your attendance, and I look forward to gathering with you again tomorrow morning to continue the good work that we do. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you. Have a good rest.
Have a great day.